Before we begin, if you want to understand why some men build empires while others disappear into oblivion, subscribe to the channel right now, because what you are about to discover in the next few minutes will change the way you see every single obstacle in your life. There is a code, a hidden pattern that cuts across centuries, and it is written in the blood of the greatest warriors who ever walked this earth. The year was 218 BC. A man stood before the Alps, the greatest natural barrier in Europe. His generals told him it was impossible, that the winter would kill the soldiers before they ever reached Italy, that the war elephants could never climb those ice-covered mountains, that Rome was untouchable. That man looked at those mountains and said only one thing: "We will find a way, or we will make one." That man was Hannibal Barca. And what he did next is one of the most daring military feats in the history of mankind. Hannibal was not born into a golden cradle of peace. He was born in Carthage, a city that lived under the constant shadow of Rome. From childhood, his father, the great general Hamilcar, trained him not to survive, but to win. The story goes that when Hannibal was still a boy, he begged his father to take him to war. Hamilcar looked that child in the eyes and said, "You can only go if you make a vow." Hannibal swore eternal hatred toward Rome. And that vow was not weakness. It was fuel. It was the kind of obsession that turns ordinary men into eternal legends. But here is what most people do not know about Hannibal. Before crossing the Alps, he had already suffered defeats. He had already lost battles, lost men, lost resources. There were moments when his army was exhausted, starving, without supplies. There were nights when the path ahead seemed to vanish entirely. And it was precisely in those moments that the warrior's code revealed itself. Because Hannibal never confused a defeat with the end. For him, every setback was information. Every obstacle was a problem with a solution. Every dark night was simply the coldest hour before the dawn. The crossing of the Alps lasted 15 days. 15 days of pure hell. Cold that killed men in their sleep, avalanches that swallowed entire columns, local tribes attacking from the flanks. 2/3 of the army, men and animals alike, died during that crossing. And when Hannibal reached the other side with the survivors, exhausted, wounded, with only one functioning eye after an infection, he did not stop. He marched down into Italy and spent 15 years inside enemy territory, winning battles the Romans believed they could never lose. The Ticino, the Trebia, Lake Trasimene, and then Cannae. The Battle of Cannae in 216 BC is still studied today in military academies around the world. Hannibal was outnumbered. Rome had assembled the largest army in its history, 86,000 soldiers, to crush once and for all the man who dared to invade their land. And Hannibal had less than half of that. What he did was use his own weakness as a trap. He placed his weakest men in the center, pulled back intentionally, and when the Romans advanced toward what they believed was an easy victory, Hannibal's flanks closed around them like a jaw. 70,000 Romans died in a single day. It was the greatest military disaster in the history of Rome. Now pause and think, what set Hannibal apart from everyone else? It was not the size of his army. It was not the amount of resources he had. It was the mindset. It was the absolute refusal to accept that circumstances determined the outcome. It was the ability to turn what looked like a disadvantage into a weapon. It was the unshakable conviction that if you cannot find the way, you create the way. And this is not just military strategy. This is the code that separates the ones who build legacies from the ones who simply exist and vanish. But Hannibal's story does not end in glory, and it is precisely here that the code reveals its deepest layer. Carthage, his own city, never sent the reinforcements he needed. He spent 15 years alone in enemy territory, winning battle after battle, but without enough support to conquer Rome for good. In the end, he was forced to retreat. Rome survived, and decades later Carthage was completely destroyed, its ruins salted so that nothing would ever grow there again. Hannibal died in exile, alone, refusing to be captured by the Romans, taking poison with his own hands. Was that failure? No. That was the cost of greatness, because Hannibal did not play to be remembered as the man who survived. He played to be remembered as the man who dared. And 2,200 years later, his name is still spoken with reverence in the greatest military institutions on the planet. Scipio Africanus, the Roman general who finally defeated Carthage, when asked who the greatest generals in history were, placed Hannibal in first place, his greatest enemy in first place. That is legacy. That is what happens when you live according to the warrior's code. And what exactly is that code? It is simple, but few have the courage to live by it. The obstacle is the test that decides who gets to keep going. Defeat is only final when you decide it is. As long as you are breathing, the battle continues. Greatness never comes with a guarantee of reward. You have to be willing to give everything without knowing if you will get everything back. History does not remember those who were too cautious to try. History remembers those who crossed the Alps when everyone said it was impossible. Think about your own life right now. What are your Alps? What is the obstacle your inner generals are telling you is impossible to cross? What is the battle you have been putting off because the conditions never seem right? Hannibal did not wait for perfect conditions. He created the conditions with what he had. And so can you. Not tomorrow, right now, with what you have, from wherever you are standing. History is built by men who refuse to accept a dead end. Alexander, who wept because there were no more worlds left to conquer. Julius Caesar, who crossed the Rubicon knowing there was no turning back. Genghis Khan, who rode out of the steppes with nothing but determination and built the largest contiguous empire the world has ever seen. They all understood that life does not wait for those who hesitate. You are alive right now. That alone is enough to start. Do not wait for the world's permission. The world will never give you permission. Build your own path. Cross your Alps. Win your Cannae. And when people tell you it is impossible, remember the man who carried war elephants over snow-covered mountains and came down the other side to change the course of history. If this content sparked something inside of you, subscribe to the channel right now, because in the next video, we are going to reveal the story of the warrior who rose from slavery and became the most feared man in the entire Roman Empire, a man whose name still makes the blood run cold to this day. Do not miss it. Your transformation starts with that next click.